So power is when you are in the moment, speaking and acting your truth, knowing that it's not the truth for everybody, and understanding that other people have different filters in which they view the world, and then being open enough to be able to contemplate things that you may not agree with or even believe in. In other words, having a growth mindset. That's when you're in your power. When you're trying to force things, or when you're trying to be somebody that you're not.
Why you think is that? I mean, when we try to force others, I guess it's because sometimes we want to convince them of our truth. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And okay, so how does it work?
well, what happens is that because sometimes, quite often, our ego, we have this thing called an ego.
Yeah.
And who
24/7.
And who people think they are, the ego can only exist in the past or the future. It can't exist in the present moment because this is where we are, right? And the past and the future exists in our minds. We are not our minds. We are energetic beings having a human experience of cause and effect.
That's what you told me that you call horizontal thinking?
Horizontal thinking is past or future thinking, right? So the roles that we play, like you as a barber entrepreneur, is not who you are.
That's what I do.
Correct. Who you are is what you bring to that role, right? And so the ego, right, it plays a big part in creating who we think we are. Because if I was to ask you, Ricardo, who are you? You would go back into your memory, tell me where you were born, kind of like I did to you.
Yeah.
Right? You wanted to tell me, oh, who are you? Well, I had to give you something.
Yeah.
So I told you where I raised, where I played hockey. I told you about my mom. I told you, right? I had to give you something.
Yeah.
Because if I really told you who I am, you and your viewers would not be able to comprehend it. And it would be very difficult for me to really truly explain it in a way that would fit this format.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm still having a hard time thinking or understanding what exercises or what we should do to go from what we think we are to what we really are. Well, how do we shift?
Well, I think that the very first exercise I give all my clients is an exercise called Watch the Thinker. If you've ever read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, I read it a long time ago. Yeah.
He suggests watching the thinker. And when you can do that exercise by just taking a deep breath and just noticing your thoughts. Awareness is nothing more than noticing.
You mean create consciousness of the moment?
Well, you bring
awareness of the moment.
Awareness and consciousness, because we talk about 7 levels of consciousness, 7 levels of awareness. Most people don't know what awareness is and what consciousness is. I asked a 15-year-old girl, and she told me, oh, it's awareness of awareness. A 15-year-old girl knew what consciousness and awareness is. You ask any adult, and they'll have a hard time.
Yeah, it's not easy to describe.
You asked me what you can do. Well, just take a deep breath and just notice your thoughts. But when you're noticing your thoughts, don't judge or label them. Because in order to judge or label something, you need a past or you need a future. You need to compare it to something. But when you're just watching your thoughts, it'll be kind of like in the 70s, they used to have these vans, the shaggin' wagons, and they used to have these bay windows, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember as a kid, you can actually, as you're driving, you could watch these cars going by. So if you can watch your thoughts just going by and not judge or label them, there comes a point where those thoughts will stop. And then a thought will come, hey, I wonder where my next thought's going to come. But if you're watching your thoughts, then who is the thinker and who is the watcher? Then you start to create that little separation, right? Because you start to realize that your mind is not who you are, right? So that's when you start doing that, then that's where you start progressing.
I see. So your mind, it's full of thoughts that you've been creating with your past and whatever you're expecting from the future.
Yes.
But not necessarily is who you are. And
No.
I mean, if I think about it, things that I used to think or say in the past, now I think completely. Sometimes even the opposite.
Correct.
Because I grew in a different direction of what I thought, and yeah, so I'm not the same person I was in the past.
And here's what's interesting, though. The neuroscientists, they say that the average person has 70,000 thoughts per day. But here's the interesting part. 80% of those thoughts are the same thoughts you had yesterday. And of those 80%, 70% of those thoughts are negative. So what happens is that, you remember the old vinyls when it skips?
Yeah.
I'm going to age myself. Dr. Hook, Sylvia's mother. I remember when I scratched it and you kept hearing Sylvia's mother, Sylvia's mother. I've had to change from that analogy because my clients are getting younger. Now I talk about the DJ loops, right? Because they don't understand, right? So the DJ loops, right? We start looping. And when we start doing that, we start to, a depressed person has depressing thoughts. A happy person has happy thoughts that are looping. And what's interesting is that they say that the average person only makes conscious choices 5% of the time.
Wow.
95% of our choices are based on our subconscious. And our subconscious stores our memories in the form of feelings.
Okay, I have a question. I'm gonna stop you there before keep going. So, just correct me if I'm wrong. Normally, we make decisions based on experience. Sometimes we just jump to the pool. We don't know if this half empty or half. Sometimes we have to make decisions, but most of the times, I guess we based those decisions in the experience that we had in the past. So we compare. Oh, I've been in this situation before, so this is what I did. So now I'm gonna do the same thing, or I made a mistake. Now I'm gonna change. But we base our behavior in the present based on our past. Is that wrong, or is that still okay using that, or what?
Well, here's the thing.
What would you suggest?
It's not a matter of right or wrong. The biggest fear people have, and the reason why they get paralyzed in the decision-making process, they're afraid of making a wrong decision.
Of the unknown.
Yeah. There's Pema Chodron who did a seminar on smiling at fear. She was talking about being on a plane and reading the newspaper, whether it was the Washington Post, whatever. They said, scientists have proven that humans are more afraid of uncertainty than they are of physical pain.
Wow.
And one of the things that happens, right? Susan Jeffers, who wrote who's got a PhD on fear, she said that at the core of our fear, we're afraid that if the worst thing happened, we might not be able to handle it. So, right or wrong are constructs of our ego, right? Because it's the past and future.
I see.
Right? If you think about this, you came from Spain. Your family might have immigrated here. You've gone through a lot of different difficult situations. You've handled them all. Sometimes more effective than other times, but you've handled it. How do I know? Because you're still here. If you hadn't handled it well, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You would have jumped off a bridge, or you may be on the east side and drugged out somewhere. But you did. You've handled it. You're an entrepreneur. You're a successful entrepreneur. You have a podcast. You're curious. You're moving. So where's the fear coming from? Right? It's your ego. Right? And the ego, I love Eckhart Tolle's one of his many definitions as the unobserved mind. Hence, watching the thinker. Right? Becoming more aware and more conscious of what is actually going through your mind, what you're actually feeling. And when you think about stress, there is no such thing as stress, because two people can have the same experience, but one could go into fight, flight, or freeze, and the other one could remain totally calm.
And why you say there's not stress? Why? Because we have different experiences, it means that there's not a stress.
Because stress right? It's just a word. The late Wayne Dyer in his presentations would challenge his crowd. He'd go, here's a bucket, take it. Tomorrow when you come back the next morning, bring me back the stress. There is no stress. There are stress reactions.
Oh, okay, I see.
Right? And stress reactions are generally a result of us taking something personal or fear that an outcome that we need to happen in order to feel significant, relevant, good enough is not happening or will not happen. So we go into self-protection. That's where the catabolic contracting energy is. And when we start going into past horizontal thinking, our body starts to release adrenaline for anxiety, right? Fear, cortisol, right? Which is where you think some bad's going to happen, right? And we start to contract. That's where hockey players hold on to their stick a little tighter.
So we're like in defensive mode constantly.
We're in survival mode, right? That's why in that energy, we see things as good or right, bad or wrong, right?
And it blocks our decisions and our energy. And
it blocks our creativity, our intuition, our gut feelings. And we are looking for a way to keep our head above water.
Just enough to breathe and keep
going down, 2, 3. And that's why people get angry with themselves and others. Because a lot of times when people are angry, they're really processing at the lower levels, it's fear and sadness. But they know when they get angry, when we're afraid, we want control. We want to have control. And fear is one way that people anger is one way that people get control again. Even to this is that if you look at any time that you've had breakups with people, quite often before people know that and even look at couples, it goes from disliking each other to resenting each other to contempt. They don't even like the way the other person breathes. They create this catabolic energy of conflict, so it makes it easy to separate.